All right, let's talk about a metal that you probably have in your pocket, or at least within arm's reach right now. And nope, it's not gold. We're talking about silver. And you should just forget that whole poor man's gold thing. Silver is gritty. It's the industrial workhorse, the metal that actually gets things done. And its history? Oh man, it is packed with some of the most unbelievable stories you've probably now heard. So let's dive in and uncover the secret history of this incredible metal.
You see, silver's true power isn't just about looking pretty in jewelry. It's all about what it can do. It is literally the most conductive metal on the entire planet, which makes it absolutely essential in pretty much all modern electronics. And because of that power, its story has been shaped by some true geniuses, and yeah, some pretty wild gamblers who tried to control it all.
So to really get a handle on silver's hidden influence, we're going to take a trip through 5 absolutely wild moments in history. We've got 2 billionaires trying to buy all of it, its secret role in the atomic bomb, a single mountain of silver that bankrolled an entire empire, the day it got kicked to the curb politically, and a jaw-dropping bet by one of the world's most famous investors.
Our first story, it kicks off in 1979. It was a time of complete economic chaos, and 2 Texas oil billionaires decided they were going to do the impossible.
So, you've got these guys, the Hunt brothers. They're oil tycoons, and they're watching the US dollar get absolutely shredded by the crazy inflation under President Carter. To protect their fortunes, they didn't want paper money, no way. They wanted something real, something you could hold in your hand. So they chose silver. And they didn't just buy a little, they went all in. Their plan was audacious, to say the least. They wanted to corner the market. Now the idea here is simple, but it takes guts. If you own all the supply of something, guess what? You get to set the price. So they just kept buying and buying, piling up over 100 million ounces of physical silver, convinced they could send the price straight to the moon.
And for a little while, it actually worked. I mean, spectacularly. The price just exploded. It went from about $6 an ounce in '79 to nearly $50 an ounce in early 1980. They were becoming fabulously wealthy. It got so expensive that companies couldn't even afford silver for things like camera film. But, when you make a move that big, you tend to make some very, very powerful enemies.
And this is where the establishment, as the Hunts called them, decided to fight back. The regulators, the exchanges, they changed the rules of the game right in the middle of it. They jacked up the margin requirement for buying silver. Now, all that means is it's the amount of your own cash you have to put down to back up your bets. All of a sudden, the Hunts needed billions, with a B, in cash, practically overnight, just to hold on to their position. It was money they just didn't have.
So who's the bad guy here? Well, it depends on who you ask. The Hunts always claimed they were just smart businessmen protecting themselves from a reckless government, and that the regulators cheated to bring them down. The regulators, they saw it differently. To them, these were just greedy speculators holding the entire global economy hostage. The whole thing ended in a massive crash called Silver Thursday, and the Hunt brothers, they went bankrupt.
All right, let's shift gears. Our next story shows that silver's value isn't just about money. It's deeply, deeply strategic. We're talking about the height of World War II, and the Manhattan Project had just hit a massive wall.
See, to enrich the uranium you need for an atomic bomb, the scientists needed these incredibly powerful electromagnets. The best material to make the wiring from was copper, but there was a huge problem. Every single ounce of copper was being used for the war effort, things like shell casings. There was a complete shortage. So, what do you do when you face an impossible problem like that?
Well, you go for the next best thing, which it turns out is actually the best electrical conductor on planet Earth, silver. The head of the whole project, General Groves, literally walks into the US Treasury and asks to borrow thousands of tons of silver. And, as the story goes, the Treasury official he talked to was, well, let's just say he was a little surprised by the request.
The official famously looked at the general and said, "Young man, we don't think in tons here. We think in troy ounces," which is just a special unit they use for precious metals. But honestly, it didn't matter how you measured it. The amount of silver they needed was just staggering.
They ended up borrowing almost 14,000 tons of the stuff, worth over $1 billion back then. They literally took this national treasure and wound it into gigantic magnet coils in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, all to build the bomb. It's just a perfect example of silver's raw industrial power. And what's even crazier, after the war, they carefully unwound all of it and returned almost every single ounce. Just an incredible feat of accounting.
Okay, from a weapon of war, let's jump in a time machine and go way, way back to the 1500s.
We're going to a single mountain in what's now Bolivia that was so jam-packed with silver, it completely changed the world economy forever.
The Potosí Mountain wasn't just like a mountain of silver, it was a mountain of silver. The Spanish Empire pulled so much out of there that the coins they made, the legendary pieces of 8, became the planet's first real global currency. Seriously, you could spend one of those coins in London, in Mexico City, even all the way over in Beijing. This one mountain funded the entire Spanish Empire for centuries. But all that wealth, it turned out to be a curse.
And here's where a basic rule of economics just smacks them in the face. Spain got so flooded with silver that they basically became too rich for their own good. Think about it. With a seemingly endless supply of cash, they just stopped making things. Why bother with farming or manufacturing when you can just buy whatever you need from other countries? This led to runaway inflation, and their entire economy just rotted from the inside. They had all the money in the world, but they weren't actually producing anything of value.
All right, let's leap forward to 19th century America for a story that's not really about markets, it's about pure politics. It's about a single law that its enemies called the Crime of 1873.
So for most of its early history, the U.S. ran on something called a bimetallic standard. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that both gold and silver were official money. You could take either metal to the U.S. Mint, and they'd stamp it into coins for you at a fixed rate, usually 16 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. This kept the money supply pretty big and flexible.
But the Coinage Act of 1873 changed everything. It basically killed bimetallism and put the U.S. only on a gold standard. By kicking silver out of the system, the total supply of money actually shrank, and that caused something called deflation. And deflation is absolutely brutal if you're a farmer or you owe anybody money. The prices you get for your crops fall through the floor, but your mortgage payment, that stays the same, making it almost impossible to pay back. This turned into a huge political war. The wealthy bankers in the East versus the farmers and silver miners out West.
Okay, for our last story, let's bring it into the modern era with one of the greatest investors of all time, Warren Buffett. Now, Buffett is famously not a fan of gold. He calls it an unproductive lump. But back in 1997, he made a massive billion-dollar bet on silver. So the question is, why?
Well, Buffett is the king of fundamentals, and he spotted a very simple but very powerful imbalance in the market. He looked at the numbers and realized that for years, the world was actually using more silver than it was mining. It was being consumed in photography, in electronics, in medicine, faster than it could be pulled out of the ground. And he knew that a situation like that, well, it just can't last forever.
And he didn't just dip his toe in. He went big, buying up 130 million ounces of the stuff. That was nearly a quarter of the entire world's known above-ground supply. But here's the key. He wasn't betting on silver as money or as some hedge against doomsday. He was betting on it as a critical, consumable industrial product. He saw that if demand keeps outstripping supply, eventually the price has to go up. And you know what? He was right.
So after that whirlwind tour, what are the big takeaways? Well, each story gives us a really important lesson. The Hunt brothers, that's a classic case of the house always wins. You just don't fight the regulators when you're using that much borrowed money. The Manhattan Project shows us that in a real crisis, silver's greatest strength is its industrial utility. Potosí is a timeless warning that real wealth comes from production, not just having piles of cash. The Crime of 1873 proves that monetary policy is a powerful political weapon. And finally, Warren Buffett's move is a masterclass in how simple supply and demand can be the most powerful force of all.
From funding empires to building atomic bombs, from billionaire gamblers to the most patient investor on Earth, silver has played this secret but absolutely central role in shaping our world. And it leaves us with this one fascinating question to chew on. Is this smart metal just an industrial workhorse that's essential for our modern lives? Or is it something more? A political tool? A financial weapon hiding in plain sight?